I spoke one forbidden word, and the alien queen stopped the war for me. The war had dragged on for years, too many years. Elijah Grant, captain of the Human Defense Fleet, stood in the command center of the Stalwart, a massive battle cruiser that was now the last line of defense for Earth. The Tsar, a ruthless and highly advanced alien empire, had been encroaching upon human space for as long as anyone could remember. Their fleets were unmatched and their warriors were fierce. But it was humanity's will that kept them alive. Elijah was a seasoned officer, well aware of the stakes, but nothing could ever prepare him for the devastating losses of a battle like the one that was about to unfold. A major assault was coming, one that could wipe out half of humanity's remaining fleet in a single blow. The Tsar knew this, and they had no mercy to offer. His eyes scanned the star-streaked screen before him, monitoring the fleet's position and readiness. His crew moved quickly, coordinating the movements of various ships, preparing for what could be the final push of this long and tiring war. The silence in the room was deafening, the calm before the storm. Elijah didn't need to see their faces to know the tension in the air. Everyone felt it. The unease was tangible. "Captain," Lieutenant Maya Alvarez said, her voice steady but laced with anxiety, "we're receiving an urgent signal from the front lines. Tsar reinforcements are arriving. They're pushing harder than we anticipated." Elijah turned to face her, his face hardening. "Any chance we can hold them off?" Maya shook her head. "Not for long. Their ships are too powerful. We've already lost contact with the Vanguard and the Defiant." The weight of those words hung in the air. Two of their most experienced ships gone without a trace. A sickening feeling spread through Elijah's chest, but he had no time for grief now. His duty was to his people, and he couldn't afford to falter. "Understood. Prep the fleet for evasive maneuvers. We need to buy as much time as possible for reinforcements to arrive," Elijah ordered. His voice was sharp, cutting through the tension in the room like a knife. The crew responded without hesitation, their focus sharp. But as the Stalwart maneuvered into its defensive position, something caught Elijah's eye on the edge of the screen, something that shouldn't have been there. A faint glow, almost imperceptible, pulsed in the distance. It wasn't a ship or any technology he recognized. It was something else, something ancient. "Lieutenant, what is that?" Elijah asked, pointing to the glowing object. Maya frowned. "I'm not sure, Captain. It's not part of the Tsar fleet. It's too far off to be a distress signal from any of our ships." Elijah leaned forward, studying the glow closely. It was small, too small to be a threat, but there was something about it, something that pulled at his instincts. "Can we get closer?" "Yes, Captain, but we'll be risking exposure to enemy fire." Elijah's mind raced. There was no time for hesitation. If they didn't act soon, it would be too late. The Tsar were closing in fast, and once the battle began, they wouldn't stop. "Proceed, Lieutenant. Prepare to move in on that signal. We may find something important there." The order was given, and the Stalwart shifted its course toward the mysterious object. The crew moved swiftly, preparing to engage with whatever they would find. As they approached the glowing object, Elijah felt a strange sensation. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up. Something was wrong, but he couldn't put his finger on it. The object appeared to be some kind of ancient relic, floating in the void of space, its surface covered in markings that none of them could decipher. It looked nothing like any alien technology they had encountered before. "Captain, we're in position," Maya said, her voice low. "What should we do?" Elijah took a deep breath. This could be their only chance to turn the tide of the war, but what if it was a trap? What if the Tsar were using this to lure them in? But the desperation of the situation outweighed his hesitation. If there was even the slightest chance that this artifact held the key to winning the war, they had to take it. "Deploy a boarding party," Elijah ordered. "Bring the artifact aboard." The tension in the room spiked. The crew knew the risks of engaging with unknown alien artifacts. The possibilities ranged from beneficial to disastrous, but they had no choice. As the crew prepared to board, Elijah's thoughts turned inward. He had always been a man of action, but today felt different. The weight of his choices was heavier than ever. The human race had come so far, but could they survive this war? Could they defeat the Tsar? And what of this relic? Would it be their salvation or their destruction? Moments later, the boarding team had safely secured the object. Elijah, along with a few of his trusted officers, gathered around the artifact in the ship's science lab. The object seemed to hum with a strange energy, as if it had a life of its own. It was as though it had been waiting for them, waiting for him. "What is this?" Elijah murmured as he observed the intricate patterns on the surface. It almost looked like a map, but there were no recognizable landmarks, no familiar symbols. Just then, the ship's sensors flared. A new signal, stronger than before, appeared on their screens. The glow from the artifact intensified, and Elijah's heart skipped a beat. "It's the Tsar," Maya said, her voice tinged with alarm. "They've found us." Elijah's pulse quickened. The battle was coming, but they were about to be caught in the middle of something much larger than just another skirmish. The relic, whatever it was, could be the turning point in their war, or it could be the end of everything. "Captain," Maya continued, "we've detected a new class of Tsar ship, much larger and more powerful than anything we've seen before." It was then that Elijah realized the enormity of their situation. The Tsar weren't just attacking, they were preparing to annihilate humanity. But the artifact in front of him could change everything. He just didn't know how yet. "Prepare for battle," Elijah said, his voice steely and resolved. "And keep a close eye on that relic. It's more important than we know." As the stalwart maneuvered into position for what would likely be a brutal fight, Elijah couldn't shake the feeling that he was standing on the edge of something far greater than the war itself. The artifact was more than just an object, it was a key, and he was about to unlock something that could either save humanity or doom it forever. The battle outside had escalated quickly, far faster than anyone had expected. The Tsar fleet, larger and more ruthless than anything Elijah had ever seen, pressed in from all sides. The stalwart was already taking damage. The shields flickered with each blow. His heart pounded as he stood at the command station, desperately trying to coordinate the remaining fleet. The situation was grim. "Captain, we're losing power to the engines," Maya shouted from her station. "We can't keep this up for long." Elijah's mind raced. The Tsar had overwhelmed the human defense fleet. The war was all but lost. If they didn't find a way to turn the tide, humanity would be wiped from the galaxy. He wasn't ready to die, not like this. Then something strange happened. A voice, clear and powerful, filled his mind. At first it was faint, like a whisper on the wind, but soon it grew stronger, cutting through the chaos of the battlefield. "Captain Elijah Grant, you stand at the edge of destruction, but you do not have to fall with your people. There is a way out, a way to end this war." Elijah froze. His hand hovered above the control panel as the voice echoed in his thoughts. He blinked, confused. Was this real? His heart raced, but he couldn't shake the feeling that this voice wasn't just in his head. It was something more. "Who is this?" Elijah said aloud, though the words barely left his lips. "I am the Queen of the Tsar, and I have been watching you, Captain. You and your people. I see your strength. I see your desperation. You are at a crossroads, but you must choose. Listen carefully, for your decision will decide the future of both our civilizations." The voice was no longer just an eerie whisper. It was now commanding, strong, and unmistakable. The Tsar Queen. Elijah had heard of her, a being of unimaginable power who controlled the fate of millions. But to hear her speak to him directly was something else entirely. "What do you want from me?" Elijah asked, his voice barely steady. The ship rocked again as another blow from the Tsar fleet struck its hull. "I offer you peace, Captain Grant, but not in the way you expect. I offer you a word that can end this war, the forbidden word." Elijah's mind was a whirlpool of confusion. A word. A single word could stop the war. He had to be hearing things. A word, he repeated, his voice hoarse. You expect me to believe that a word will end this war, just like that. It is not just any word. It is a symbol of a promise made long ago, before the war even began. A promise between our peoples, a promise that was never fulfilled. The word holds the power to either destroy us both or to bring peace. It is your choice now, Captain Grant. You must speak it and you must choose wisely. Elijah stood still, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. The Tsar had been their enemies for years. Generations of humans had been raised to believe that the only way to survive was to fight. How could a single word change everything? He clenched his fists, his mind racing. But beware, the Queen's voice continued, there are those who will stop at nothing to prevent you from speaking it. The word is powerful, and some would use it for destruction rather than peace. You must decide, Captain. Speak it or let the war continue and the galaxy will burn. Elijah's breath quickened. The stakes were higher than ever before. He had always believed that the key to victory was in strength, fighting, surviving, pushing back against the odds. But now, in this moment, he was being asked to choose something far different. Could he really trust the Tsar Queen? Could he trust her promise of peace? You're asking me to end the war. With a word, Elijah asked, his voice shaking with uncertainty. Yes, the Queen answered, her voice laced with both power and a strange sadness. But only you can do it. You are the one who can bring this to an end. Your ancestors made the pact, and now it is your turn to fulfill it. The word is the key to unlocking the peace you so desperately seek. Elijah closed his eyes. The noise of the battle, the sounds of ships exploding and crew members shouting, faded into the background. His entire life had been about war, about surviving, fighting back, and protecting humanity. But what if this was the way out? What if the forbidden word could stop it all? What if this was the answer he had been waiting for? Choose, Captain. The fate of both our peoples rests in your hands. A chill ran down Elijah's spine. He had never felt so alone in his life. His fingers gripped the edge of the command console, knuckles white. There was no turning back now. The fate of the human race was in his hands. He couldn't ignore the weight of that responsibility. But even as he stood there, torn between hope and fear, the situation outside the ship grew more dire. The Tsar fleet wasn't slowing down. The stalwart was being hit harder with each passing second, and the crew was doing everything they could to hold the line. But it wasn't enough. Captain, Maya's voice cut through his thoughts. The Tsar are breaking through our shields. They'll breach the hull within minutes. Elijah snapped back to reality, feeling the full weight of the situation pressing in on him. The war was at its peak. The Tsar were almost upon them. He was running out of time. He turned back to the holographic screen, his eyes scanning the vast array of Tsar ships. They were closing in on him and there was nowhere to run. The crew was depending on him. The future of humanity rested on his next move. Captain, Maya called again, panic rising in her voice. We need a decision now. Elijah closed his eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath. His mind flashed to the faces of his crew, to the families on Earth who still held onto the hope that the war would end. They were all waiting for him, waiting for something, anything, that could save them. With a final glance at the Tsar fleet, Elijah made his choice. I'll speak the word, he said, his voice resolute. There was a moment of silence as though the very universe itself held its breath. Then, as if in answer, the artifact they had discovered on the battlefield began to glow, its energy pulsating with an intensity that seemed to respond to Elijah's decision. Elijah stepped forward, his voice steady, but with a weight that felt heavier than any weapon he had ever held. Let it end. The words had barely left Elijah's mouth when everything around him seemed to freeze. The hum that followed the forbidden phrase reverberated through his chest, an energy so intense that it felt as though it were coursing through his very bones. The air around him grew thick, almost tangible, and the battlefield outside the stalwart fell into an eerie silence. The Tsar fleet, which had been closing in for the kill just moments before, now hung motionless in the void of space. Their massive warships, once bristling with weapons and poised for destruction, were frozen, suspended like statues caught in time itself. Elijah's breath caught in his throat. He stared at the screen, unable to comprehend what was happening. Was this some kind of trap? Had the Tsar Queen betrayed him? The ships didn't even appear to be functioning, their lights dimmed and their weapons inactive. It was as though the entire galaxy had come to a sudden and unnatural halt. The artifact aboard the stalwart, the one they had recovered from the battlefield, was glowing brighter now. Its surface shimmered, pulsing in a rhythm that matched the deep, resonating hum in the air. It was as if the artifact was alive, its energy surging with power Elijah had never imagined. "What have you done?" The voice of the Tsar Queen filled his mind again, its tone both surprised and pleased. "You have spoken the word, Captain, and now the pact is reborn." The balance has shifted. Elijah's mind spun, confusion flooding his thoughts. "What pact? What does this mean?" he demanded. His voice shook, but his will remained strong. "It means you have opened the door to the past, Captain. The forbidden word is not just a key. It is a bond, a promise made long ago between our peoples. And now, you are the one who must choose whether to fulfill it or break it forever." Elijah's heart hammered in his chest. The truth was unraveling before him, but he was far from ready to accept it. The war had dragged on for so long. His people had suffered, and so had the Tsar. Could this strange bond really be the key to peace? Or was it simply another trap, one far more insidious than he had imagined? "You're asking me to trust you." Elijah's voice was steady, though the storm inside him was anything but calm. "You want me to believe that this word, this bond, will end the war. It is not just a word, Captain. It is the fulfillment of a promise. A promise made long ago, before either of our peoples knew war." The Queen's voice grew softer, almost wistful. "You see, our ancestors once fought together against a greater threat. They stood united, but that unity was broken. The word was the only thing that could hold both our civilizations together to ensure that we would never fall to another enemy again. But it was abandoned, forgotten, when our people turned on each other." Elijah stood frozen, trying to process everything. "So the war. All of this, it's because of a broken promise." "Yes, Captain. The word you spoke has reawakened the pact, but with it comes a terrible responsibility. You are the one who now holds the power to break the cycle. You can end the war, or you can let it consume both our civilizations. The choice is yours." The silence stretched between them. The hum of energy continued, the glow of the artifact growing brighter by the second. Elijah could feel it now, something deep within him, a connection to the artifact, to the Queen, to the fate of his people. It was overwhelming. His thoughts were clouded by doubt and fear. Could he trust the Tsar Queen? Was this all an illusion, a grand scheme to manipulate him into betraying his people? But the war had taken so much already. Lives had been lost, planets destroyed, and the Tsar, though ruthless, were not the only ones at fault. Humanity had fought back with everything it had, but in the end, they were all just pawns in a much larger game. Elijah's mind raced as he considered the gravity of the decision before him. Could he end the war not by force, but by fulfilling this ancient pact? Could he truly bring peace to both sides, or would it be a mistake that would haunt him forever? His grip tightened on the control panel in front of him, the metal cool under his hands. He needed more answers. "Tell me," he said, his voice low but determined. "If I fulfill this pact, what happens to the Tsar? Will they leave us in peace, or will they simply wait for the next opportunity to strike?" "The peace will be fragile, Captain. The Tsar will not forget their past, but they will respect the word. They will honor the pact, as will you. But there are forces within both our peoples who will not accept this. There are those who believe the word is a weapon, not a tool for peace, and they will stop at nothing to destroy it. Elijah felt a cold chill settle in his chest. The war was not just about battle fleets and strategic victories. It was about something deeper, something far more dangerous. He was standing at the precipice of a decision that could shape the future of both the Tsar and humanity. He had never been more certain of one thing. This would not be easy. The hum from the artifact intensified, and Elijah felt a sudden surge of power within him. It was as though the energy from the artifact was flowing through his veins, filling him with a sense of purpose and dread. His mind was clearer now, but the weight of his decision only grew heavier. "Captain Grant," the Queen's voice echoed in his mind, "I will not ask you to make this choice alone. But know this, your people are already lost if you fail, and the Tsar, too, will fall into chaos if you do not act." Elijah turned away from the control panel, pacing the room as his thoughts collided with each other. His crew, his people, they all depended on him. The Tsar, as much as he despised them, were not the only threat to humanity. The universe was filled with dangers far greater than what any one species could understand. The artifact continued to pulse, its energy now an undeniable force within him. Elijah closed his eyes for a moment, steadying himself. There was no turning back. The word had been spoken, the pact had been reawakened. The only question now was whether Elijah would honor it or let it slip away and condemn both civilizations to an eternity of war. "I need time," Elijah said, his voice hoarse. "I need to think." "You have no time, Captain," the Queen's voice answered, now filled with an urgency that matched his own. "The Tsar fleet remains frozen, but it will not stay this way forever. If you do not act, I will be forced to make a decision for you." Elijah's heart raced. He had no more time to waste. The future of humanity and of the Tsar was in his hands. With a final deep breath, Elijah turned back to face the artifact. The decision was clear now. There was no more room for doubt. "I will do it," he said, his voice resolute. "I will fulfill the pact." The decision was made. Elijah Grant had spoken the forbidden word, and now the weight of that choice hung heavy in the air. The battlefield outside the stalwart remained eerily silent. The Tsar fleet, once poised to destroy everything in their path, was frozen, suspended in space. Their ships were motionless, their weapons dormant, as though they were nothing more than lifeless husks. But that silence, that stillness, was only the calm before a storm of a different kind. Elijah could feel the energy of the artifact pulsing through his body, filling him with power, yet also with dread. The hum of the artifact vibrated in his chest, and the very air around him seemed charged with tension. It was as though something massive and ancient was awakening, something beyond his understanding. But the Tsar Queen's voice broke through the stillness, her words clear and commanding. "The pact has been sealed, Captain Grant. The word has been spoken, but do not think for a moment that peace will come easily." Elijah stood in front of the control panel, hands clenched at his sides, as if holding onto his resolve. "What are you saying? I thought this would end the war," he said, his voice betraying the uncertainty in his heart. "The word is powerful, but peace is fragile, Captain. There are factions within both your people and mine who will resist this. You have done your part by speaking the word, but now the true challenge begins." Elijah's heart sank as the realization began to dawn on him. This wasn't just about stopping a war. It wasn't going to be that simple. He had awakened something deep and ancient, something that could either save or doom both civilizations. He had hoped that by fulfilling the pact, the bloodshed would end. But now, it seemed, that was just the beginning. "There are those among your own people who will not accept peace, Captain. Your government, your military. There are those who crave power, who will see this as a betrayal. They will want to resume the war, believing that humanity can only survive by conquering others." Elijah felt the weight of her words like a crushing blow. He had known that there would be opposition, but hearing it so plainly made it feel all the more real. People would fight against peace. There would be bloodshed, not from the Tsar but from his own people. The Queen's voice continued, this time colder. And on my side there are those who still see humanity as nothing more than a threat to be eradicated. They will not accept this peace. They will plot, they will scheme, and they will try to undo what you have done. If you do not act swiftly, both our races will fall into chaos. Elijah's pulse quickened. His mind raced as he weighed the consequences of his actions. He had hoped for a quick and clean resolution, but he should have known that peace would never come easily. It never did. He had just opened the door to a new kind of war, a political war, one that would be fought not with weapons but with influence, lies, and betrayal. The hum of the artifact in his chest grew louder, as though it were trying to warn him. Elijah turned away from the screen, his gaze falling to the crew members around him. They were watching him, waiting for him to lead them, to make the decisions that would shape their future. He could feel their eyes on him, full of hope and fear, and he knew that this wasn't just about him anymore. This was about everyone. "Captain," Maya's voice broke through his thoughts. "What do we do now?" He turned to face her. Maya's eyes were filled with concern, but there was something else there too, a determination. She had been with him through the worst of it. She had seen him struggle and fight, and now, in this moment, he could see that she was ready to fight once again. But fight for what? Peace, or something else entirely? "I don't know," he said, his voice low, "but we can't just sit here and hope it all works out." "You are correct, Captain," the Queen's voice echoed again in his mind. "Time is running out. If you do not act, your people will lose faith in you. And the Tsar will grow restless. The word you spoke was a beginning, but now you must ensure that both your people and mine stay true to the pact. You must be prepared to do what is necessary." Elijah clenched his fists. He could feel the weight of the responsibility pressing down on him. He had made his choice, but he hadn't known the full extent of what it would mean. He hadn't known how fragile peace truly was. As the stalwart hovered in space, the Tsar fleet still motionless, Elijah's mind swirled with possibilities. He had to move quickly, decisively, if he wanted to prevent a civil war from breaking out within humanity's ranks. And he had to act before the Tsar factions loyal to war began to rise up. But what could he do? What would be enough to ensure that peace held? He could not fight a war of words and influence like his enemies could. He was a soldier, a captain. He had trained for battles of fire and steel, not battles of politics and manipulation. "You have no time, Captain." The Queen's voice cut through his thoughts again, sharp and commanding. "I can offer you assistance, but you must be quick. I can help you gain leverage with the factions that seek war. I can offer you strength, but only if you act now." Elijah's mind raced. The Tsar Queen was offering him help, but at what cost? What price would he have to pay for her assistance? And could he trust her even now? "I'll do whatever it takes," Elijah said, his voice steady, though his mind was torn. "Good," the Queen replied. "Then you will need to make an alliance with those who stand in the way of peace. But be careful, Captain. In a situation like this, every choice has consequences." As the Queen's voice faded, Elijah turned back to the control panel. His fingers hovered over the communication systems. He had to contact Earth's leadership, rally the support of the people. He had to make them understand that peace, while fragile, was the only chance they had left. "We need to contact Earth," he said to Maya, his voice firm. "I need to speak to the government. We're going to need their support if we're going to stop this from becoming a civil war." Maya nodded. "We'll make the call, Captain, but you're right. We can't afford to lose any more time." As Elijah sat down at the communications panel, a cold realization washed over him. He had thought that speaking the word would be the hardest part. But now he understood. The hardest part would be keeping the peace, and the price of failure was higher than he had ever imagined. The galaxy had never been more fragile. Elijah Grant stood on the bridge of the Stalwart, his hands gripping the railing as he stared out at the still, motionless Tsar fleet. The calm that had followed the spoken word felt unnatural, like a pause before an inevitable storm. The artifact, still glowing with a strange and unfamiliar energy, was now a constant presence in his mind. It hummed with the power of the pact, a power that had tied humanity and the Tsar together in a bond that could either save them or destroy them. Elijah had thought that by fulfilling the pact, by speaking the forbidden word, he would end the war. He had believed that peace was within his grasp, but now he saw the truth. Peace was never meant to be easy. It was fragile, and the forces that had driven this war would not disappear overnight. "Captain, we have incoming transmissions from Earth." Maya's voice interrupted his thoughts. "It's the government. They're demanding answers." Elijah exhaled slowly, the weight of what was coming pressing down on him. He had known this moment would come. The factions within humanity, the ones who still saw war as the only path to survival, would never accept the peace he had tried to broker. And now the time for negotiation had passed. The time for action had arrived. He nodded at Maya. "Put them through." A holographic image flickered to life before him. The faces of several high-ranking officials from Earth's government appeared, their expressions a mix of concern and frustration. General Harris, the head of the military, was the first to speak. "Captain Grant," Harris said, his voice laced with disbelief. "What have you done?" "The Tsar fleet is frozen, but their hold on this galaxy isn't over. You've sealed a pact, a promise that no one in the government authorized. You've put us in a position where we have no control. What makes you think we'll allow this?" Elijah's eyes narrowed. He had anticipated this response, but that didn't make it any easier to hear. "I've done what was necessary to prevent further bloodshed, General. This is the only chance we have to end the war." "You've handed over control to the Tsar," Harris spat. "They're our enemy, Grant. You can't trust them." "He's right," another voice chimed in. It was Senator Larkin, known for his hawkish stance on the Tsar. "Peace is a dream. We need to prepare for the war to resume. We cannot—" "No," Elijah interrupted, his voice cutting through the rising tension. "The word I spoke is not a dream. It's the only way forward. If we don't follow through, we will all perish in this war. We have no other choice." Larkin's eyes flared with anger. "You speak like you know the future, Captain. You think you can control the Tsar just like that?" He snapped his fingers, emphasizing his point. "You have no idea what you've started." Elijah felt his pulse quicken. He had made the choice, and now he had to face the consequences. But as the words left his lips, he knew the real battle had only just begun. This wasn't about defeating the Tsar anymore. This was about holding humanity together in the face of their own divisions. It was about proving that peace was possible, even when the odds seemed impossible. "Let me speak to the Tsar," Elijah said, his voice firm. "I need to make them understand that we can coexist, that war is no longer the only way forward. If I can't get them to cooperate, then we're all doomed." The holographic faces before him exchanged uncertain looks. General Harris was about to speak again, but Senator Larkin beat him to it. "You really think they'll listen to you, Captain, after everything?" "I don't know," Elijah replied honestly. "But I have to try. We all have to try." With a reluctant nod from the officials, the communication channel was cut, and Elijah was left alone in the silence of the bridge. The weight of his decision felt heavier than ever, but it was a weight he had to bear. There was no going back now. The Tsar fleet remained frozen, their ships suspended in time. The artifact's energy pulsed with a quiet intensity, like a heartbeat that resonated within him. Elijah knew that speaking to the Tsar Queen was his only option. He had no idea what the future held, but he had to believe that the peace he sought was still possible. He turned to Maya. "Prepare the communications system. I need to speak with the Queen." Maya didn't hesitate. She worked quickly, setting up the channel. Moments later, the Tsar Queen's voice echoed through the room. "Captain Grant," her voice was calm, but there was an edge to it, a warning. "I see that you have spoken to your people. They are not pleased with your actions." Elijah's gaze hardened. No, they're not, but this is bigger than any of us. We can't go back to war, you know that. I know, the queen replied, but there are those among my people who see this peace as a betrayal. I will have to deal with them just as you must deal with the factions within your own ranks. The path forward will be filled with challenges. I understand, Elijah said, his voice steady, but we can't stop now. We have to keep moving forward no matter what. You are right, Captain, the queen said after a pause, and I will help you. But remember, your enemies are not just those who oppose you openly. There are those who will work in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. You must be vigilant. Elijah clenched his fists. He had always known that this wasn't going to be easy, but now he realized just how far the battle would reach. This wasn't just about military strength or tactics. It was about uniting people, about holding on to hope when everything seemed lost. And in that moment, Elijah understood that peace wasn't just a single word, a single choice. It was a constant, tireless effort. I'll do whatever it takes, Elijah said, his voice unwavering. The queen's voice softened. Then you must be ready to make the hardest choices of your life. The peace you seek will not be without sacrifice. But it is possible, Captain. Elijah nodded. He had known that peace was never going to be easy, but now more than ever he understood the true cost of it. He wasn't just fighting for the future of humanity and the Tsar. He was fighting for the very idea of peace itself. As the communications link was cut, Elijah turned back to the bridge. He had no illusions about what lay ahead. The factions within humanity were already mobilizing, and the Tsar would not remain passive forever. But in that moment, Elijah knew that he had done the right thing, and if he had to fight every day to maintain that peace, then that was what he would do. He wasn't alone. Not anymore.